Welcome to Washington, East to West Sports. This is episode 107. I am Matt Beatty, joined alongside, as usual, by Sean Beatty and Kevin Ardall. If you want to get involved in the show, go ahead and tweet us. I'm at Beatty_Matt. Sean is at Nasty Billy 22, and Kevin is at SEA2 Believe. That's C2 Believe on X or Twitter, or whatever you want to call it. Twix is what my girlfriend prefers to call it. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Tell us what you think in the comments below. Like our videos, dislike our videos. We're going to talk first about the OL Reign, and I was actually in town with Sean watching Megan Rapinoe's final home game. It was not super exciting. It was a 0-0 tie. She had a couple chances, but they played to a 0-0 draw, and then she spoke to the crowd afterwards. They have one more game on the road in Washington on October 15th. That'll be on Paramount Plus if you want to watch it, but they still need to at least get a point to clinch a playoff spot. So, Sean, what do you think of Megan Rapinoe's final home game while we were watching it?
They played not to lose, so they didn't lose, but playing that way also didn't make them win. So yeah, it was like you said, it was just like I felt like everybody was really tight and they didn't want to lose. So kind of how it came out. Two teams are also playing for a playoff spot, so I feel like them playing not to lose was understandable for multiple reasons, but still, yeah, you're right. It was not the most entertaining game because both teams just were scared to make the mistake.
Yeah, they were they tried to feed Rapinoe, which obviously, in her final home game, you're going to try and get her the ball and try and get her to score because, of course, she can score goals, so that's not an issue. But you're right. They play not to lose, which you can understand given their current position in the standings, but make it a little more exciting. And it was actually the record for NWSL game for attendance, over 34,000. So a lot of people showed out to Megan Rapinoe's last home game. So I will have Paramount Plus because I'm going to order it so I can watch the Seahawks on Sunday, which I do every fall. So maybe I'll try and check out Megan Rapinoe's last home game. And now we've got some NHL hockey to talk about. I believe it is currently 2-0 Vegas at the end of one. Sean and I, we're going to give some quick predictions here. So, Sean, how do you think the Kraken are going to finish? Give me a point total. They had 100 points last season and clinched the last wild card spot.
Well, as we know, results tell false narratives. So process is what matters. So it's and everywhere I've seen, most of the projections have Seattle out of the playoffs. Um, but it's not like that they're crazy out of the playoffs. It's like they're the next team out. It's gonna come down to like the Nashville Predators, like them losing today. I tweeted out, I said like it's super early season watch, but like who the Kraken fans need to watch out for is not Edmonton, not Vegas. They're going to lock up their spots. Is the for the Pacific is going to be um the Kings. Kings I think are vulnerable, but I don't know if they have the Kraken have enough to leapfrog the Kings. So I think the Kings are. Then it's a wild card, and then it's going to be Colorado, Dallas, and uh my ESPN standings are all messed up. It has Colorado on here twice, so I'm not seeing the full standings. But my thought is the National Predators are going to be one of those teams that are going to be fighting for that last couple wild cards. I say the Kraken getting in is the 8 seed. I oh yeah, I don't have Calgary on here. We're there they are. ESPN. Like, come on, man. I have Arizona Coyotes on here 3 times and Colorado twice. So I was like, I'm missing teams. Um, but I think Calgary is going to take a step up, and I think Nashville is going to take a step up. But I think Calgary jumps up forward, and they barely beat out Nashville for that last seed. I think they win that, get 95 points to go to the playoffs. But don't be surprised if it's less.
I'm going to play Price Right rules here. I'm going to take 98 points, but I think that based on last year, 100 points got in the playoffs. I think they're going to be just outside the playoffs this year.
Well, 100 points
Um,
got them in, but they were the one wild
they were the
card.
final wild card team along with the LA Kings.
Were they?
Yeah, I looked it up like 10 minutes ago. You can look it up if you like to.
Interesting. I thought
Um,
they were.
Yeah, they got the final wild card spot and played the top seeded Avalanche in the first round, and they won in 7 games. So, I think this team did lose some pieces. Ryan Donato, I watched while I was cooking dinner, and he is on the same line as Connor Bedard, had their first goal of the game, and they ultimately won. So Donato's playing well there. But God, can we just stop obsessing over Connor Bedard broadcasters for the love of God, please? And Morgan Geekie is now paired back up with Brandon Carlo, former Tri-State
Matthew,
Americans.
the Winnipeg Jets. Matthew, the Winnipeg Jets were the 8th seed.
Oh, were they?
Yeah,
Oh,
Vegas was the number 1 seed, anyways. I knew
oh,
they were the. I knew they're. Yeah, yeah. 100 points. Yeah, Winnipeg got 95 and got in.
oh. Well, my bad.
93 got in the Eastern Conference. So that is the area you need to probably get to. 95, 93.
All right. Well, I'm still gonna say they are just outside. I think 100 points is gonna be the benchmark this year. So we'll see what they do, but I think 98 and just outside the playoffs. And then give me your conference championship and Stanley Cup prediction. I'm gonna go in the East. I think this is the last dance for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin give them enough. The addition of Erik Karlsson boosts that defensive unit, and I think they win over the Toronto Maple Leafs, who break a curse. What are you doing up here? Get down. And they are gonna make the Stanley Cup Finals, the Pittsburgh Penguins over the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then in the West, I keep picking Edmonton, and it just keeps backfiring. So I'm not going to do that this year. I am going to take Colorado over Vegas. And I think, like the last dance, I think the Pittsburgh Penguins win one more Stanley Cup with Sid, and this is the final one. Sean, what do you think?
No. I think Toronto is there. Toronto's very good. I think it's Toronto versus Carolina in the East. Carolina goes. Vegas just made it 3-0. And then it's funny, Matthew, you say Edmonton. Advanced metrics, all the nerds have come out with the moves the Oilers made have as Edmonton as the best team. So this year, so it's funny that you don't pick them this year. So I pick against the Colorado Avalanche. In my opinion, it is Colorado, Dallas, Edmonton, and Vegas as the big four. And I think Vegas is the odd man out there. So I'm gonna go maybe with my heart a little bit. Dallas Stars versus Edmonton Oilers. And I'm going to go Dallas Stars versus Carolina Hurricanes. And that is solely because either Joe Pavelski or Brent Burns, one of my Sharks, will get a ring, and that's it. And I'll go Dallas Stars, I guess. Dallas Stars right now.
All right. Well, let us know what your
that was my least analytical pick ever. so there you go. That's pure heart right there.
Let us know what your predictions are for the Stanley Cup. Kevin, you got a prediction?
It's gonna be Florida and Edmonton.
Ooh,
that is
not bad pick.
Though.
Yeah, that's actually
Kevin threw out 2 names.
Yeah.
I thought he was gonna pick the Ducks versus the Blue Jackets or something like that.
Who's winning in that matchup?
Florida, sadly.
Okay. Well, let us know what your hockey predictions are, your Stanley Cup prediction, how you think the Kraken will do this season. Go ahead and tweet us. I'm at _Matt. Sean is at NastyBilly22, and Kevin is at SEA2Believe on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Let's move on to some disappointment. Yes, the Seattle Mariners, they failed to make the playoffs. We're not going to go through the entire schedule while we were off for about a month there, so we have some stuff to talk about. They had their fate in their own hands really towards the end of the season, 11 games against Houston and Texas, and ultimately failed. Texas and Houston clinched in game 161, and Texas just won tonight, and they are in the ALCS. So, Kevin, I'm going to throw it to you first. You got the Mariners hat on. Tell me your thoughts of the end of the Mariners season.
Rip this thing off my head and throw it across the room. Yeah, it was a big disappointment. It's literally like going from the highest of high to the lowest of low from having the best record in August, and I think they had the best record in August out of any other team in the show, to completely like just tubgirl.comming on themselves. Don't search that website at all, folks. But it was just bad. Like, I mean, it's just those pie charts that just go down, and like, but it's not like there. It's just like poop. Yeah, just a lot of things kind of go into it. Pitching for the most part was still good, but it wasn't near what it had been. And then like hitting was just super inconsistent. Like Julio was very inconsistent for a good bit. Honestly, toward the end, the only thing that was solid was like JP and a little bit of Cal Raleigh. Suarez had some madness, but you know, and then you got a couple of fill things from like from Rojas and the other kid that we got from Arizona, and then Mike Ford had like a solo blast like once every 4 games and was striking out for the rest of it. Yeah, it was not something fun to watch, sadly. I mean, it's exciting that, when it gets close and stuff like that, but I'd rather, with this team, with how much they've struggled over the last 2 decades, I don't really want that. As a Mariners fan, we don't want close. I would rather clinch playoffs like 2 weeks beforehand, and then just be able to do like what the good teams do and like rest their players, like go. And then like for example, in that Dodger series, like on the last day, like we were even talking about it because I was leaving Sean's place. Like they literally were putting out like the popcorn guy in E12, who was literally the number 4 in their lineup. Like it was sad, and they got their butts kicked by, like Logan Gilbert got smashed by them. Yeah, it was just not good. And we'll kind of get on. I imagine you're gonna go on to Cal Raleigh statements in a little while, so we'll kind of go into that. But yeah, it was just sad and disappointing to watch as a Mariners fan. To go from the highest to highs, especially from how we ended last season, even though we didn't win, finally making the playoffs, then having the higher expectations because you brought in certain pieces. We'll go into that here in a little bit too. And then having the August that you did, to going to the complete polar opposite in September, when it's crunch time. Yeah, it's not great.
Sean, what'd you think?
I'm gonna say this again. Usually results tell false narrative. You have to look beyond that in the process to figure out what actually happened and why we are where we are. Kevin is correct. He glossed over, but like I will say, like, I mean, we could just look at it like team pitching over the course of the season. The Mariners there's a couple metrics you can look at. They were a top at worst 4. This is like starters and bullpen, so just arms out of arms. Top 4 in baseball. Most metrics, I'd say pretty comfortably they're the 3rd best team in baseball when it comes to like arms as a team, starters and bullpen. So yeah, the arms failed a little bit at the end of the year, but I mean, again, they relied on like Kevin's boy Miller and Wu, and they're young. They're gonna get tired. They shouldn't be expected to put that, but you had Marco and Robbie Ray go down. Then you had Hancock, who was hopefully to take some innings, and he got hurt. You had 3 guys who you expected to, and they all played pretty well when they played. It's just that you can't run out 9 starters. Like other than calling up Ty Malone, you just ran out of dudes to start games for you. Because Wu and Miller were good. Logan Gilbert was good, but just at the end of the year, they just got tired. They just were throwing so many innings. And I made the comment with a friend, and she was like, well, I like the Rangers somebody put up like 6 runs against the Mariners. And then the offense got 5. And it was some no-name, just terrible pitcher. And when they were like, well, 5 should be good. And I go, yeah, normally, but like sometimes the offense needs to help out the arms have helped out the offense so much during, especially the beginning of the year, and they didn't come up. And at the times the arms needed the bats to step up, they just didn't do it. And I will say this, like it's more of like the Mariners again, like looking at it here as it comes to batting stats. WRC plus, runs created plus, it takes account. They're the 9th best team in baseball. Like they weren't a horrible offense. People are like, oh, they're bad, all this other stuff. They weren't. It's just often what happened was they couldn't do both at the same time for certain stretches. And when they were like, you saw, they're the best team in baseball. Like if this is clicking, their offense and their pitching is at the same time, they're going to compete with anybody in baseball. They could compete with the Rangers. They could compete with Houston. They could compete with the Braves. The problem just was like they couldn't pick each other up sometimes. It wasn't quickly clicking, and the bottom of that lineup is just like if they got anything done, it felt really good because then it felt like this team could go. The problem is sometimes they had 3 black holes or 2 black holes at the bottom of this lineup, and you just need to extend it a little bit. If you extend it a little bit, I don't need like world beaters, but just make average major league hitters at the bottom of the lineup, or even a little less, like 90 WRC plus at the bottom. That makes me feel a little better. Like it's not an automatic out. It's not you're DHing Sam Haggerty in a clinching game. Like Sam Haggerty's value comes from his glove, and you're taking that away and DHing him. Like I just don't understand those types of moves. Like so it was frustrating, but again, this team won 88 games. They're projected to win 83. They did a lot of good things. Do you want me to talk about the offseason, the failures, Matthew, or are we just talking about like the recap of the season? Or
go ahead.
The failures came from I gave Jerry and them a pass 2 years ago when I said, hey, that like maybe they don't like a guy here, but they got to sign somebody this last offseason. They didn't sign anybody this offseason. And now you're looking at this upcoming offseason, and there's just like no real bats available other than this one Ohtani guy. And when you go into a whole offseason and your whole offseason agenda has to sign one specific player, you've already messed up. Like you can't put all your eggs in like I have to sign this guy, or else this offseason is a failure basket. And them not signing a bat the last 2 off seasons is biting him in the butt. There's just not a lot of good bats, and you have to find a way to thin this lineup. And now, unfortunately, you're going to have to trade from a growing and a good minor league team or minor league prospects when you could have just paid some money to not have to trade anybody and still had these Cole Youngs and Harry Fords and all these guys. So it's just frustrating that, like we talked about, they just need to thin the bat up. This was a good team. This was a playoff team. We're watching the AL West just dominate the playoffs. The Mariners were in all of baseball, you could argue like a top 7 team. Like they just played in the AL West. They didn't play in the Central or play in the National League. If they play in the National League, they're in the playoffs. They didn't have the fortune of just being a little bit lucky. They're not, unfortunately, the Seahawks who play in the NL or in the NFC. They're in the equivalent of the AFC, and they're in a dogfight. Like you have to have some superstars in the AFC. You have to do these guys, and unfortunately, their window was smaller, but it could have been fixed, and they chose not to. So I don't want to get. We'll talk about what they're going to do later in the offseason, but it was a frustrating way to end it. But this is still a good team, and still like 88 wins and being a little unlucky is still a good margin. They missed the playoffs by 1 game. One Cedric Mullin robbing a home run away from making the playoffs in the 9th inning at home in Baltimore. He doesn't catch that ball, the Mariners are in the playoffs. And the Mariners, as you can see in this thing, Baltimore has no pitchers. They're getting run over. The Mariners have pitchers. They could pitch and they could hit just enough. Like this team would compete in the playoffs. They're built for the playoffs. The problem is they just couldn't make it. And because they play in the AL West where Chris Young is and the Astros and the Rangers are just Rangers held on and the Astros are just a good team, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating. You have to win your division. Like that's the saying. You got to win your division. You got to compete with those guys first because they're a good enough team to be in the playoffs. They are a top 6 team in the American League, but they didn't make it because of how it works. And I'm not complaining with how it works, but it's just frustrating. They're a better team than this, and they didn't live up to it.
Yeah, I mean, simply put, the Mariners just failed at the end. I mean, that's all it really was. They set themselves up in August to make a run of the playoffs and be there now, like playing along with the Rangers and the Astros, and they failed. As simple as that. You have your fate in your own hands. You go 3-7, and they both clinch at game 161. You have Luis Castillo going in that game that you need to win, and the team just failed. So, like you guys have said, it's frustrating, but I'm not gonna pretend like this is something new. Like as Kevin mentioned, the past 2 decades before they made the playoffs, like this is a feeling we know well. Now this time it's different because the expectations were different. The streak was broken last year, so there was a lot of optimism coming into this year. And then, like I talked about on our last podcast, the highs and lows of this season were crazy. Like at the trade deadline, the Mariners appeared to be out of it, have a great August, and look like a World Series contender at that point. Like they had their fate in their own hands, and they just fell down the stairs, and all of us as fans are just watching, and it's just like, what's going on here? And Sean mentioned it too. They just couldn't put pitching and hitting together at the same time. It's just like it's
Well,
the
they
same
did for 1
story.
month. We did for 1 month,
Yeah,
but yeah.
it's the same story as the previous 20 years before last year. Like they just could not get it done when it mattered most, and
Well, the
that's
previous like years they just sucked. Like
they,
that
they
was
just,
that was
they
that was
just
the biggest issue.
couldn't
They
get
just
it
had no
done
talent.
when it mattered. And they did it last year, and that was awesome. And to watch how it unraveled this year was unbelievably disappointing. And so I watched some of those games towards the end, and you have optimism because they played the teams that they were fighting with, and as Sean mentioned, they can compete with those teams. We know that, and to watch them just let it slip away in the fashion they did, it's just you know it's frustrating as a fan, and I get all the anger on social media afterwards because you want answers. But we'll talk about the blame game and Cal's comments here. So um, I don't have the comments right in front of me, but I think we all kind of know what he said. Generally, right after the game, he called out ownership, and then the next day before the game, he apologized for his comments. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. Cal is right in both instances. Yeah, it's fair to call out ownership because, of course,
Yeah.
more better players would help this team win games. Absolutely, but that's also a way to kind of discredit your own involvement in it, Cal, because
Yeah.
you have direct effect on how the results come out. You are on the field playing the game. You are out there hitting baseballs and throwing out runners, stealing. Like you can't just put the onus on ownership. So for those who say it's just ownership's fault, that's lazy. Like that's just simply lazy. It's an entire organizational failure. Like it's as simply as that. The players on the field could have played better. They had it in their hands and they let it slip away. I got an email on Tuesday since I subscribed to the Mariners about playoff tickets. First of all, as someone who worked at an organization, you never, ever count your chickens before they hatch and put it out there publicly. You wait and you have an internal plan in case that happens. In 2015, the Americans were on the bridge of the brink of the playoffs, and we had an internal plan for playoff tickets. They made it as the 8th seed, and we had our playoff ticket plan. We executed it. We put it out there. And then they played Kelowna, who had Leon Draisaitl, and they lost in 4. But at the same time, we didn't put out an advertisement for playoff tickets before they had made the playoffs. So that's
Other teams, especially in the Northwest, I know have done that though. That's not the Mariners.
I get that, but this is the Mariners we're talking about here. So, like, do not count your chickens before you hatch. Dipoto came out in the press conference after the season, and his comments just didn't help at all. Like, they actually made it worse. Like, it's just so everybody in the organization takes some fault here, and it's up and down. The players can play better. The GM Dipoto can sign better players, make it an appealing place to come play baseball.
Well, can he sign?
And,
That's the conversation.
I mean, yeah, I guess can he? That's the real question. And of course, the ownership. I'm never going to expect anything of rich people because they have money and they can spend it however they want, regardless of whether it's a good investment or not. So, Stan, please spend money, but I don't expect you to because you haven't yet. So,
don't even say his name. I'm so sick of that
yeah.
guy.
So at this point, trying to rely on ownership to spend money, like, come on, fans, like, why are we trying to think something's going to happen when it hasn't yet? So until it happens, let's not assume that's going to ever happen. So it comes down to Dipoto trying to put the right team together to make the playoffs and make a deep playoff run. Sean says that Cervais is just a vibes guy, so get rid of him whenever you want. It doesn't really matter to me. The nerds behind these decisions, maybe they should take a look in the mirror a little bit and run those numbers again. So it's an entire organizational failure. Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to the extent I kind of agree. I do believe it's more on upper tier stuff because the other teams are paid to play baseball as well. And some teams are just going to have higher paid superstars than others. Now, I know Dipoto is going to it's going to try to use teams like the Mets and the Padres to try to argue the point that, buying doesn't win championships. But at the same time, too, we saw Texas literally do the thing that we should be doing, and they weren't even in the playoffs this year, and they're now in the ALCS because they actually won.
Yeah, Texas and Astros are two of the highest spending American League teams, and they're basically going to play each other in the championship.
Yep. Just because it doesn't work in some cases doesn't mean it's not going to work for you. So that shouldn't be a reason for them to shy away. But I already know that's going to be one of their biggest excuses because they're dumb. They're easy and they're predictable. You got to have big boy player. As Cal Raleigh mentioned, you do need to have the veteran presence on the team. You have a lot of young dudes like Julio. We're probably going to have some struggle periods from time to time. Yes, he is a superstar, but at the same time, too, he's going to struggle. And having, a veteran presence superstar like a Pete Alonso or, someone along that caliber, Ohtani, stuff like that, even though Ohtani's younger, but is going to help in those situations. Having better players around to help them bring them out of funks is going to help in those situations. Yes, hitting coaches and stuff like that can help, and I hope a lot of them do what JP Crawford did in the offseason. And that's another thing too, is everybody's like, well, everybody's now sold on JP Crawford. I want to see this on a consistent level. We haven't seen it really for a year and a half. Do I hope it continues? Sure. That'd be great if he can continue what he did in September, being the only piece of offense kind of going with this team. But unfortunately, sometimes you just need those big boy bats in the lineup to help get your runs, the consistent hitters. And yes, sometimes you're gonna swing and miss. I mean, look at fucking Colorado with Chris Bryant. Hasn't really panned out over there.
No, don't look at anything Colorado ever does.
Yeah, that's true.
They're a dumpster fire. But yeah,
I mean, and there's other situations too, but that was going to go into. But yes, do the teams have to play better? Oh yeah, like Ty France played like butthole for about 2/3 of the season. I'm being kind of generous there. He might be learning Korean in this off season. Like heads up for people, like especially with what's brewing in our minor leagues. So you better be starting learning Korean right now, or Japanese, one of the two. Yeah. Too many, and also way too many. I think I don't know if you've probably mentioned it before, Sean, but too many utility players. Like, we don't need 5 utility players on this team. Like you only need literally 2, essentially, if that. Like stop having 5 freaking Dylan Moores. That doesn't win championships. Sorry guys, but you you need star power. You need a little bit of star power on this team, and then you can have young pieces in there as well. But and then yeah, a lot of it was a little bit of unfortunate luck. You lost your number 2 and Robbie Ray for the entire season. You had a bunch of young arms that did well, but unfortunately, as Sean already mentioned, young arms only do so much. And then I think, and honestly, I think Castillo got a little gassed at the end of the year too. He had a couple of rough starts as well. And even though he's your aces still do get blown up from time to time. It happens. All aces are not gonna have their best stuff all the time. They can have slumps as well. So unfortunately, it is a mixture of stuff, but I believe it is a little bit teetered more toward that piece of crap owner that doesn't want to spend money on people, because you got to make it enticing too. Yes, we have the whole electric factory and stuff like that, and it looks like it's fun and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's also a business too. Like, players are trying to make a living for their families and want to make sure that they're fed, so to speak, and so they want to go to a place that they know they're going to be fed. And when you have places like San Diego and the Mets paying out the butt, for people, why would you want to go to Seattle? That's probably not going to pay you crazy amounts. So you got to make it where they know that the owner is willing to fork out the big bucks for you to come over and play there. So, fortunately, we sadly just don't have that.
Sean, you got 3 minutes.
So Cal's comments, yes, Matthew, you're correct. Cal is correct, but Cal they could have played better. The fate was in their hands as players, and they could have played better. I said before, this was a playoff caliber team. The talent was on the field enough to be a top 6 team in the American League, and they did not do it. So they could have done it. It's also twofold. It could have been, ownership could have done more. It probably should have done more. They failed this offseason. Cal probably I don't know if Cal needed to apologize because he's not wrong, but Cal probably just should have had the conversation internally. I think everybody knows that was the case, and I don't regret Cal for saying it, but that's a conversation that could be had internally and needs to be had with the players to the management. Like, hey, we need help. We need help here. Like when the Rangers go and buy a Simeon and a Corey Seager, like those players are raking right now. Corey Seager hit a home run today, and I just turned it off, and they won like 9-1 or whatever it was. I didn't even see at the end of it, but they've done the part where the players are coming up, young players. They need supplemental pieces, and like to Kevin's point, you need less utility guys and more like. I don't even need in the past like superstars. You need a guy who is a major league player. You need 2 dudes like you could get an Ohtani, please. If you get an Ohtani and get like a lower level, like this guy is a starter. What you hope, and they had bad luck this year. They thought Wong was a starter. Colton Wong, last 3 years, WRC plus 110. His WRC plus as a Mariner was 40. No one on the planet saw that happening. Nobody on the planet saw that happening. AJ Pollock, 109 last 3 years, WRC plus 40. Like, if they just aren't 2 of the worst players in baseball, this is a lot different, but they collapsed. Both those players just collapsed. Like nothing I've ever seen before. Like it was just like sudden, like boom. Like they're both not serviceable players. Like, and if they're both fine or okay, then they're probably in the playoffs. But they both happened to fail, and it was just like couldn't happen. And so, and yes, Matthew's learning that in the age of nerds, it's been for 20 years. Managers often don't set the lineups by themselves. It has been often a nerd collaboration with things. I'm not sure every organization's different. Some I'm sure still let the managers do everything, but most I know that's why John Madden left, because the Angels were basically like, you don't get to decide the lineup. And that's just common. And he left all of baseball because he left the Cubs because of that. He left the D-backs because of that, or the Devil Rays, and left the Angels because of that. Like the nerds are setting up. This is how it works now. And to Matthew's point with that is I get it. It's platoons. Platoons work because the nerds are correct. But we don't need a platoon where the point of like, I'd rather, I get that Sam Haggerty bat's right, but I'd rather have a lefty Jared Kelenic playing against a lefty pitcher than a righty bat, than a righty Sam Haggerty. There's a limit to a platoon when just let Jared Kelenic play.
We'll be right back.
Yeah.
Sean, you can finish that thought.
Okay.
After this.
I'm almost done.
Welcome back to Washington, East to West Sports. Sean was in the middle of his thoughts on Cal's comments. Sean, continue.
So yeah, when it comes to the platoon, everybody's doing it. It's fine. It's just I would wish that there was a sense of like understanding of when to platoon a player. You don't know if Jared Kelenic can't hit the righties if he doesn't play against the righties. He was playing well enough. I thought he deserved a shot. And to Matthew's point, yes, Scott Service doesn't make a lineup entirely, but if Scott Service is making a lineup and rolled that lineup out there and the vibes were as they were at the end of the year, he needs to be fired. Like, you can't make those decisions and just have the collapse of the vibes. If you're a vibes guy, because that's what most managers just are nowadays. I remember our buddy Tim Richard talked to me about this. He explained this to me, 10 years ago, where the question of do managers even matter? I was listening to a podcast today. I'm a little behind, so I was listening when they were going into the playoffs, and they were doing a fancy draft of like pitchers, defense, starters, bullpen, all this other stuff. And it's an analytic podcast. It's Fangraphs podcast. They almost didn't even include managers because managers, what do they really do on the field? the odds are it's actually not much, because even pitching changes, everything comes down from the organization. They collaborate, so Scott has a voice in that conversation, but it is not Scott just making that decision. All the decisions. So that's kind of what we've reached to in modern baseball. What and how much do the managers even matter in baseball anymore? So that's why I'm not. I think we talk about it. I'm not super like against firing Scott because he doesn't have a lot of say in it. My problems with Kevin's problems, it's higher up. It's Stan. Like the thing that pissed me off the most about the whole thing was Jerry's comments were super stupid the first time around. I get the math behind it, the 54%. That totally makes sense. That percentage over 10 years is like the fourth best team in baseball. Like it's like the Braves, the Dodgers, the Astros, and like one other team, or the Rays and the Mariners. 54%. They're the only teams who win 54% or more in the last 10 years. So I get what he's saying, but like the idea of missing the playoffs, saying you should be grateful, and then saying 54% was tone deaf. You didn't understand it. All you need to do was just give the Pete Carroll answer and just say nothing. Just be completely useless as a interview and be Pete Carroll and just lie basically the whole time. That's all you needed to do. You didn't need to like don't tell the Mariners fans, because Mariners fans are like, they treat we're stupid. You are stupid on Twitter. You're stupid. Like, you need to understand that. And Jerry needs to lie to you because you're stupid. So like, and that's what you need to hear. He just needed to give you the we're sorry, we effed up, all this stuff, and say we'll do better. Because he told you the plan. The plan is correct. It's just you didn't need to hear it, and it was tone deaf at the time. And so then he came back and retracted all his statements the next day. He's like, sorry, it was tone deaf. And I'm like, it just, you've created a whole monster you didn't need to create. And then the biggest issue of that whole thing was Stanton was hiding in the back, not answering questions. I want to stand there. I want Jerry and Stanton to stand on the podium together and be like, listen, we know that ownership's not letting Jerry spend money. However, I want to know with both of you here why we are not signing free agents. Because if Stan just goes, it's Jerry's fault, then we have like two of them. They can't, Jerry can't say, oh, it's Stanton or ownership's not doing this. I mean, because Ryan Divish has commented that it has in the past, and then Stanton not be there. And then, the rumblings of like, blah, blah, all this other stuff when they're both not there. I want them both to be next to each other and answer the freaking question. We need to sign free agents. What are you guys going to do to stop it? Or are you guys going to stop it? Because Jerry was answering, and Jerry and Hostetler, the new current actually GM, is like, they're like, oh, all this other stuff, and Stan's just in the back. And I'm like, get him up here and answer the freaking question yourself. I want to ask you a question. And I think that it doesn't really come down to it. Unfortunately, ownership's the only thing that changes, and that's the problem. And I think until you hold their feet to the fire, ownership's feet, and that's going to come from media, because they're not going to listen to us on Twitter. They're going to listen to the media there. And they're going to have to answer the ownership tough questions and get on them. And until that happens, nothing's going to change. And
I hear what you're saying, Sean, but the media holding his feet to the fire is not going to change anything. At this point, John Stanton is what he is, and he has money. He doesn't have to change. He doesn't. It doesn't matter what he says.
It works in the big cities, though. It works in Philadelphia and New York. The owners, the media makes people quit. Like it works all the time in big markets.
Look at it this way. Us as Mariners fans, we do have the ability, but it would take an entire collective effort to not watch games, not spend money, not buy tickets, and then he could just move the team. So we're in a catch-22.
That happens all the time in big markets. They don't have to not go to games. The Yankees, the Mets, they don't have to go to games. They just complain enough, and then Mets owners are ousted. It happened 4 years ago. There's like, shut up and leave. And there was a big thing, and then they eventually the media market just drove them crazy and they left. Just leave. But the media is never going to do that here, and that's what's going to happen, because unfortunately they're going to look at the bottom line, and that's just what's going to stay. And it's not going to happen. And we'll briefly touch on your last point on the Doc Matthew. What do they need? They need bats. That's it. End of discussion. They have bullpen. They have starters, defense. They just need bats. That's it. We've figured out their whole offseason. We'll get into greater detail on how we get that, because that's an hour conversation. But they need bats.
Nothing will ever change with ownership. They don't have to change. They care about the bottom line, and that's it. And you can't explain to rich people that maybe you spend money, you'll probably get more back in return anyway. But that doesn't matter to them.
You won't, but you'll still make money. You just won't make as much. Like, I mean, the Mets didn't make as much money. Like, that's just what it is. But no, it's. I mean, it did. Stanton wasn't the owner a couple years ago, so it's they did change. It's just it's until that changes. Unfortunately, we talked about it. The biggest thing about with the continued success of the Seahawks isn't necessarily, I don't think, Pete Carroll. It is the ownership. Ownership means a ton in major sports. You have good ownership, it will trickle down. And I don't know if that's ever going to change. If Stanton, that I'm going to do a swear that fucker Stanton's still here. Like I warned the kids at home that fucker Stanton is still here. I hate his face. I hate seeing him on every goddamn Twitter thread. I hate Stanton.
I want to let Kevin get the last word here, but in my book, everybody but Julio, Cal, JP, Castillo, Kirby, Gilbert.
I don't have a problem with any single pitcher. Any pitcher.
All those guys, I think,
did their job. They all did their job.
And the rest are playing for
Ty
jobs.
France, Kevin said, Ty France, and Geno Smith, or Geno Smith. Geno, he was bad. He was just bad, and that was a salary dump we thought it was. He was horrible this year. He did not come through. I'll give Jared Cohen a pass too, Matthew. He was good when he played, then he broke his foot. Now that is a big deal, but like he was good when he played. Like that's fine. If you told me he was that every year, I'll take it.
Kevin, you get the final word.
So, what I was going to say is like a devil's advocate to Sean's like about saying Cal probably should have done it internally. I disagree. I think the reason why he didn't do it internally because he knows internally nothing's going to get done. Now, he probably knows that externally, it probably still likely won't get done.
I was going to say, I don't think it changes anything when you do it.
There's still a possibility of public, especially with the power of social media and the internet nowadays, like social shaming kind of can get shit done. Like
I just think it means Cal plays for a different. I think it just means Cal plays for a different team in 2 years. I think that's what's happening.
I mean, and that's a possibility too. But
Cal better learn.
I think he knows that if he does it internally, there's like nothing's going to happen, and that it could be just his only shot.
Yeah, I just want Cal to play for the Mariners. If he does it internally, he's going to play for the Mariners. Externally, there's a good shot he's not on the Mariners in a couple of years.
I think he knows that.
It might get traded to a team that that might win.
Or it might get traded to the Pirates.
Yeah.
If I'm Jerry, I'm petty. I'm like, go to the Pirates.
But especially with nowadays, like you can cancel motherfuckers pretty damn easily nowadays. It takes a lot.
Are you saying accusing Jerry Dipoto of doing something horrible?
No, not Jerry Dipoto. I'm talking John Stanton.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I'm talking the piece of crap, John Stanton. Like Dipoto's doing what he can with being like boxed into a corner, like because he.
I mean, the Mariners ownership already put their foot in their mouth one time, so like
it. Honestly, he can only do so much if he's not given a checkbook to go get things. So it's on that piece of crap that we're just gonna call him Voldemort. Because he's just
it's a good word. It's a good word.
He's just awful. Like that just like why buy a sports team if you're not going to? I mean, yeah, sure, it makes a little bit of money, but like you essentially need to. The better you do, the more money you can make. Like,
Jerry's not void of blame, but he is. He is playing with half a deck. That is true. He is not playing with a full deck.
Yeah, and so I think that was just Cal Raleigh's shot, and why he's not going to apologize because like.
Well, he did apologize. He apologized the next day.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he apologized the next day.
But I mean, like. I don't think he should have. To be honest,
I think he should have. Yeah.
John Stanton
he should have, and but I get it. He's in the heat of the moment. He's passionate. I get his comments, and we all said it, Kevin. Cal is correct. Like we are not disagreeing with Cal. Like he is correct. But no, yeah,
you got to bring it out into light because unfortunately, sorry to all the Seattle fans, but 95% of you are dumb. Like you don't understand how it works. Like.
Well, I saw people like saying like 54%. 54% is not a good winning percentage. I'm like, that's not like, holy crap! Like,
yeah, I'd take 54% all freaking day.
If you told me 54% over 10 years, yeah, like the 3 teams that were above it all had like 8 playoff appearances in those years. Like, yeah, he's talking about in 10 years. If you have 54 winning percentage over 10 years, you're a really good team, and that's what he's shooting for.
Unfortunately, we have one of the dumbest fan bases in sports. It's I mean, and that's why I like doing this podcast to kind of help hopefully educate some of them to kind of not be so. I want to be as polite as possible, but not so silly.
You just called them dumb for you call them dumb like
I
every
know,
weekend.
We're also
yeah,
not
yeah.
in most other fan bases, so we don't know how dumb they are. We really
I mean,
don't. So
there's very dumb people in a lot of
I mean,
families.
there is,
There's-
but I mean, I especially what I've been seeing recently, and we'll get into that with the Seahawks here in a moment. I've been
We could just go to Seahawks. I think we're good with the
stuff.
Mariners.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, let us know your thoughts on the end of the Mariners season. Go ahead and tweet us. I'm at Bailey_Matt. Sean is at NastyBailey22, and Kevin is at SEA2Believe. That's C2Believe on X or Twitter or Twix. Comment on our videos on YouTube. Like our videos. Tell us what you think. Please subscribe. Smash that subscribe button. Click it a bunch of times. It doesn't really help, but it would be cool. Let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks. They have played 4 games. They were on a bye this last week. I'll just roll through these since there's only 4 of them. 30-13 loss in the opener to the Rams at home. Then they won 37-31 in overtime against Detroit on the road. Then they won 37-27 at home against Carolina. And then their most recent game was 24-3 at the New York Giants on Monday Night Football before their bye week. So, Sean, what have you thought of the Seattle Seahawks so far?
I thought this is exactly what they should have been. So everyone's talking it's some oh my goodness, look at this thing. I thought they'd be 3-1. I was hoping they'd be 3-1. Carolina and New York are bad at football, guys. Again, results don't tell false narratives. The Giants are a bad football team. They were last year. So
I think the results would say that right now as well. So
yeah, well, no, because everyone was looking at last year. They won 12 games or 11 games, whatever they won, and I was like, they're a bad football team. Someone had to win football games in the NFC, and they were lucky. Minnesota Vikings, they won 13. They're a bad football, or they're not a bad football team, but they were an 8-win football team, and someone had to win football games. A team that was worse had to win football games, like the Seahawks. The Giants are not good. The Carolina Panthers are not good. These 2 teams are fighting for the first pick. They're very bad. Detroit, they won a coin flip football game. Could have gone either way. And then they lost to the Rams pretty decisively. I don't take anything really from these 3 games. The Seahawks offense was absolutely horrible against the Giants. Daniel Jones throws a ball 2 yards behind a wide receiver, and Witherspoon returns it. Good job for Witherspoon returning it. But if that's a good quarterback, it's a 3-point game in the 4th quarter, and we're having a very different conversation. I just they took care of they beat the bad teams. They did what they're supposed to do. They're 3-1. Now, you won't know who the Seahawks are until they play the good teams. They haven't beat good teams, and that you need in order to be a Super Bowl contender, to be a team that is relevant. You haven't been relevant in 6 years in the national scene of football. Nobody cares about you for 6 years, and until you want to beat some of these good teams, or until you beat the good teams, that's when you start becoming relevant on the national scale. And we're going to start figuring that out. I don't know how healthy Cincinnati is coming up, but 3-1 right now. I'll get to future opponents later, I guess. 3-1 right now is where I thought they'd be after 4 games. Let's say that.
Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what we've seen last year. Really bad defense and very inconsistent offense. Gino's still only playing a half a game essentially.
Gino has 2 games where he has 112 passing yards or less. That's what it is. That's just what it is.
Yeah,
it's 2 games.
He's
been very bad in 2 games.
Yeah. With the Rams game, yeah, I was kind of surprised. I mean, I wasn't surprised because the Rams always kind of put in a just
Matthew Stafford's back. I got news for you. That dude's slinging it.
That Tutu Atwell guy, the newer kid.
Puka.
Tutu's okay, but yeah.
I'm just saying the Rams might be legit. They've lost to the 49ers, Bengals, and Eagles, all Super Bowl contenders, and they beat us and the Colts. So they're losing to Super Bowl contenders, and that's it. Now they're losing by 1 score, other than the Eagles, but they kicked a field goal at the end of the game to make it a 2-score game.
So that game, and it's always the first game. It's really hard to tell from the first game of the year because everybody's just getting their foot in the ground type of deal. There's going to be lots of errors and stuff like that. I'll be very interested to see the second matchup in LA. But I think that'll be a little bit more close contended. I think we probably still lose that. But week 2 against the Lions, God, yeah, that was pretty much kind of similar to what it was last year. It's just a air fest by both teams and just sloppy play. I'm just slinging it recklessly and stuff just happening, and yeah, it was that was kind of hard to watch, unfortunately. But I mean, we got a W at the end of the day, which I mean, and then like some of their people went out for part of it, so it was kind of like maybe we get a little lucky there. Let's see, the Carolina game, that was disappointing. Oh, sweet God. I mean, some of it was garbage time, but to give up over 400 yards and 27 points to an 0-5 Carolina team that's led by Andy Dalton, that's kind of sad.
Bryce Young, Andy Dalton for one game, but yeah.
Well,
I mean, we lost. Well, I mean, not lost, but we gave up 27 points to Andy Dalton. Like
the Red Rocket.
No, God, no. Like, and you know what Andy Dalton's going to do.
That's the red rifle. The Rocket is something very different.
Ooh, yeah.
Every time
we have to bleep that out, actually.
Yeah.
Like in the opener when he was with the Bengals, he threw for over 4. Now we won, but he threw for over 400 on us, and like
that was the John Ross only good game of his entire career.
Yeah, but it's like, Pete, you know what he's going to do. There's no mystery behind it, and Pete's just like, stop the run. Stop the run. What? Wait, Andy's throwing for 12 yards, damn near a pass. Like what? What? Just stop the run. Stop it. Like the fact that Pete Carroll's silly as a coach, it just shocks me. Other than his ooh rah 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 that people love to, but it was bad. That game was the fact that it was kind of getting close toward the end. Yeah, sure, we did dump 37 points on him, but like that was not a good game at all. And then as Sean was mentioning, yeah, the whole Monday Night Football game was not impressive. Like everybody, I love seeing the tweets of everybody's like, Sean Witherspoon has arrived. I was like, literally he just stood there and a ball came to him. I'm like, let's talk about that, folks. Like,
I mean, he did catch it because the Detroit Lions,
the Detroit Lions guy. I'm not saying it doesn't.
No, the Detroit Lions guy did drop it because
like he made like a Jesus Richard Sherman move, and I was like, the dude, like it was just a disconnection between freaking Daniel Jones, the receiver. He thought he was just going out, and the dude decided to dig and turn back. Like
it's just the Giants.
The whole like they're like Jalen Carter who when he gets a sack, like he was unabated on that sack the whole time. I mean, we've talked about Jamal Adams' sack count, where half of them were literally it's just Jamal Adams unblocked going to the quarterback. My fat ass could have got to freaking Daniel Jones on that play. Like nobody's blocking freaking Witherspoon, and he just gets to him. I'm like, okay, cool. Like I could put my dog out there. My dog's gonna get to Daniel fucking Jones. This iPhone right here is getting to Daniel Jones on that play. Like, what are we talking now? Yes. Is he playing solid? Like, is he playing bad? No, but like, let's not. This is why I hate 12 fans. They're like, oh my god, he did things. I was like, he didn't really though. Like, he did okay. Yes, it does take skills to catch that ball and run it, in for a pick six. But at the same time, too, like he's just running his route, and then the ball just falls into his hand, and he's just like, oh shit, okay, let's go. Like,
my biggest issue was more the second sack where he's just running out of bounds and he pushes him, and it's like a 1 yard loss, but it's a sack. Like that also happened earlier with Brooks too. Like sacks are stupid. Like
and then literally, I guarantee you right now, 75+% of the Seahawks fan base thinks that the D line is fixed right now. It's not.
I hope not, but
it's not. No, it's true. I'm actually being kind. It's probably about 90% of the Seahawks fan base on Twitter. They're dumb. They're really dumb. Like they think that because we almost set an NFL record that we're good on defensive line.
I'll take that they beat up the teams they were supposed to beat up, at least on defense. Like that we did not do that a couple years ago.
They were supposed to have a good game. Now, is it more of what I'm saying is the whole almost beating the record thing? Was it more of the Seahawks D line being good? Or was it more of the Giants O line being a hot pile of garbage of teddy bears in a traffic cone?
60-40 probably Giants. But again, like
I think it's more
just
75-25.
last year, the Seahawks don't get 2 sacks in that game. Like they're just terrible. So at least like they're at least showing up. You know what I mean?
They are showing up, and they are doing their job to and that's the thing too. That's what they should have done against the Rams team, who were a bunch of like new pieces and stuff like that. That's what I didn't expect, 9 sacks or whatever the heck the margin was. But like you should have at least 3 sacks against that brand new, you have 3 young pieces and 2 old pieces of crap that suck. Like you should be getting just Matthew Stafford. But
the coach over there is pretty good.
I mean, yes, but at the same time too, it just goes to show you that Seahawks fans are thinking a little too highly of the D-line. It's more down here, and it's just more the O-line of the is just sucks. Like it's you could literally put like 5 pins out there, and it would probably block the Seahawks a little bit better than what was going on out there. It just wasn't good. And then we have people on Twitter thinking that we're about to go 5-0 for our next. That's adorable.
I did see that. Yeah.
Evan, I'm gonna just even say his name. That's the stupidest shit I've ever seen. Like, in what magical forest land?
He also thought the year was over week 1, and then like it's back.
I know how they have a podcast beyond me. And then I had some dude like argue with me on Twitter today, like because the 49ers are good, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. That he's like, stay undefeated because we're coming for you. I was like, we're gonna get our shit pushed in. I apologize for the language, but like it's gonna be a murder fest. Like the 49ers are going to rip us apart, and it's gonna be like a rabid dog and a piece of meat. There's just gonna be blood and crap everywhere. We're just gonna get wrecked. And it's like, well, but we've lost the last 3 in a row, so it's unlikely to see a 4th. And I was like, in what magical spirit realm of football does it make it like a general rule that we get an edge because we've lost 3 in a row? That statistically, it's unlikely that we're going to lose again for a 4th. It's not there. I'm sorry.
I saw a stat that the Lions beat the Packers in No, who beat the Packers just last week? Oh, the Vegas. Or the Raiders. The Raiders beat
yesterday?
The Packers for the first time in Lambeau for like 40 years. So yeah, the past
it wasn't in Lambeau. The Lions beat them in Lambeau. Yeah. That was Thursday night a couple weeks ago.
It must have been the Raiders then, because it was the
Raiders were in Las Vegas yesterday.
Yeah, it was a picture of Crosby, and it said like they hadn't beat him in like 38 years or something like that, or not something. Yeah.
It just kind of goes to the stupidity of Seattle sports fans that just think this magical blessing is going to be put up upon us, and they just don't look at like what's
first win versus the Packers in 36 years. There you go, 36 years.
God.
So yeah, for that guy
curse is broken, people. Curse is broken.
Well, that's what people like. Past failures doesn't mean future success. Like it doesn't.
As I told
look at the Mariners.
As I retweeted it, I was like, stats before eyes and prejudice. Like stop. Like just stop. Like sure, I'm not saying I don't want them to go 5-0, but I'm realistic. Like it's not happening, folks. Unless we get some magic miracle again, like last season, where like their top 3 receivers on each team die, or the quarterback dies, like type of deal. Like we just get crazy lucky with they're plagued with injuries type of deal. But like it's just not happening, folks. It's not. We're not going 5-0 over our next 5 games. Like it's like, what have you guys been watching the last 4 weeks? Like, have you watched all this crap? Andy Dalton literally just shred your defense with an old Thielen and God knows who on that team for 27 points. And you think that the 49ers aren't going to drop more? Like, what fantasy land are we living in? God, whatever you're on, I want some.
We can talk about the 49ers. Magical. We can talk about the 49ers on a bit, but I agree with Kevin.
Like,
if Brock Purdy's even like sort of legit, we're in trouble.
Well, I would like to jump in here, Kevin. First of all, opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one. Lauren shared that with me a couple weeks ago. So
stats also exist too.
I don't know who you guys follow on X, but I'm glad I don't follow them because I don't care what they think. I watched the Rams game and I had to go to personal training. They were up 13-7. I came back and they were getting dominated. and then their 2 starting tackles were out, so that probably contributed to some of it. But still, that is absolutely
No,
brutal.
they just got whooped. They got whooped every part of that game.
I was able to watch the Detroit game. I'm actually happy they didn't fold because they easily could have folded and lost that game, but they were able to come back and win that game. And then Carolina, I was stuck in traffic coming back from Portland, so I didn't get to watch any of it. Listened to it on the radio, so I don't really know. I didn't really get to see what happened. But I'm really not surprised by that score at all. And then the New York game, I did watch that one, and the Seahawks weren't good. I agree with both of you that like the defense played well against a bad offense. But the offense was bad.
They did what they're supposed to. They did what they're supposed to.
Gino got hurt in the game, so I'll give him a little bit of leeway because that ankle roll, I thought it looked like he might have injured it a lot worse than he did, and he came back in the game. So that's good news there, and it sounds like he's going to play maybe 100% this week. It's hard to tell. I'm not a doctor. That ankle didn't look like it went in the best position, so we'll see how his mobility is. But I agree with both of you, actually. I don't really know how good this team is. Like, like Sean said, they won the games they were supposed to win, but it wasn't impressive. Like, you're not beating the doors off teams, really. You've given up almost 30 a game the first 3 games, and then you played Daniel Jones, who got paid somehow. So, I don't really see this team as good or bad at this moment. They're 3-1, and you guys have mentioned the schedule upcoming. We can talk about it because they are at Cincinnati this week, and then they're home against Arizona, who has, is not good, but has showed signs of life compared to what people thought they would be. Then they host Cleveland in the retro game, and then they're at Baltimore, who had a stinker to lose to Pittsburgh this last week. So we'll get a better idea of what this team is in the next 4 to 5 weeks, because a lot of fantasy football podcasts I listen to is 4 games is a good sample size, and it's like, sure, for fantasy, but for a team, especially with the opponents they've played, it's just 1-4 New York and 0-5 Carolina, and Detroit is 4-1, and Detroit's only lost is Seattle, so that's good. And then the 2-3 Rams, which is, Sean mentioned the teams they lost to and the teams they beat, so still not really sure about the Rams either. So I did call Puka Nacua, though, and he is on one of my fantasy teams. Got him for $1. So that, it's hard to tell. And, in the NFL, I think once you get halfway through the season, you have a much better idea. Now, obviously, like we saw with the Mariners, let's not get too high, let's not get too low, because you can get to the top and then fall off the hill very quickly. So there's going to be a better indication of what this team is in the next 5 weeks. And like I said, after that podcast, I'm not going to get too high, I'm not going to get too low. And it sounds like you guys just need to stop listening to other people because it makes you angry. So I'm just going to watch these games, see how it goes. And let's talk a little bit about this upcoming game before we get into other NFL stuff. So Cincinnati is hosting Seattle, 10 a.m. on CBS. Oh, we got 10 minutes. And I got the line here. It is Bengals -2.5. The over/under is 46.5. So that gives about 24-22 game. We'll just go through the predictions. I do think that the Bengals cover. I think Joe Burrow's ankle is finally healed. It looked like he was a much better player against Arizona. He scrambled a couple times. Obviously the calf is not fully healed, but Joe Burrow is very good at football. Double Jamar Chase, probably a good call. And don't let him beat you. They have T. Higgins. Sounds like he's probably going to be out for this game. They got Irv Smith at tight end. Joe Mixon will probably have a day because they like to run the football, and he's pretty solid running back. So I think it's going to be 31-27 Bengals. Kevin, what do you think?
This one's tough. We can't really count last week because the Arizona Cardinals are a hot pile of garbage. That just kind of show flashes of like, oh, we'll play football a little bit every now and then, but like, there's not a lot of talent on that team. I think honestly, I think Arizona gets a little lucky sometimes because there's just so many undocumented pieces on that team with not a lot of footage that like with a new coach, you're seeing stuff that they just haven't prepared for, and they're like, "What was that?" Like, which we might see.
I can get to that. Good point, Kevin. You bring up. I'll talk about that when my turn. But yeah.
The thing that, granted, that you just came off of is that Cincinnati's O-line is a bunch of teddy bears and traffic cones. Unfortunately, you just have a way better quarterback behind them. With Joe Burrow, who's probably not going to make as many silly mistakes as Daniel Jones did. Like Joe Burrow is an NFL quarterback, whereas Daniel Jones is not. So yeah, and defensively, they're not to the scale of what they once were, I would say. So it just really depends on if Geno shows up for a half or more, or if he's going to do his like 1/4 game, type of deal. I'm going to say it's going to be close. I say the Seahawks edge this one out barely. I'm going to say it's going to be 27-24.
Nice.
So you picked the Seahawks?
Yes.
Wow. All right. So
I might even pick the Seahawks.
split the tie here, Sean.
Okay, so I'll give Kevin brought up a good point with Arizona and then just throwing stuff at a wall. I watch F1 racing. And for those that don't know, there's some teams who can compete and can't compete. And I'm always really frustrated when I see that. Like there's teams that know it. There's this team, Williams Team Racing. They're just terrible. They're terrible every year. And my thought, if I'm the head guy at there, I'm trying whatever because I'm already projected to be last, like the Cardinals. And Kevin brought up a good point, and it's good because they're already supposed to be bad. Who cares? Try whatever. Like, just try stuff because you're already lose. Let's say you lose. You're supposed to lose. Who cares? So I'm kind of sad that the Cardinals are doing it because it might show they might have a future once it gets better because that's something I wanted teams to do. If you're projected to be bad, and like I see it in like a lot of esports too, where someone's like, well, this is the meta, so let's just play the meta. I'm like, well, you're worse at that than the other team, so just try something else. If you know you're going to be worse at that other team at the thing, you're just running into a wall over and over. Like, at least if you try something else and lose, you just lose in a more creative way. But who knows? Maybe you find something. Maybe you find this thing. But, like, you rolling the dice and knowing you're going to lose versus, like, maybe I have a 1% chance of winning this way. I give the Cardinals credit. They've done some nice things in some halves, and who knows? Like, they're winging some stuff. As for this game, when it gets to the point where when I can say the Seahawks are finally good again, is when I don't look at the other team and I decided the Seahawks can win. When the Seahawks were good, it was like, okay, how healthy are the Seahawks? I don't care about the other team. How healthy are the Seahawks? What their game plan is? Okay, then I'll look at the other team and determine how we're going to win. It sucks that the last like 5 or so years I have to look at the other team to decide if the Seahawks are going to win because that's where it comes down to. It comes down to how good is the other team and how healthy they are if the Seahawks have a chance. And it still is this way. If Joe Burrow's healthy, the Seahawks don't win this game. I don't think Joe Burrow is all the way healthy yet. And so I think that's why the Seahawks have a chance. I think there's no T. Higgins. Their O-line's not great, and Joe Burrow's not as mobile yet as he's going to be. So he showed some flashes to Matthew's point in the second half where he ran it a couple times. But in the first half, he was still like, you can tell he's not all the way there yet. And that the injury is going to probably be that soft tissue calf injury that takes like 3 months to like be fully healthy. So probably December is when Joe Burrow's really going to be healthy. And then they're going to be like Super Bowl contender Bengals in December or in November. So I think we're still getting injured Joe Burrow. So I think that gives us a chance. And I'm with Kevin. I think the Seahawks win this game by 27-28. Because if Joe Burrow's healthy, the Seahawks do not win it. I don't think they have a chance. But Joe Burrow's not healthy.
All right. I'm the outlier here. Well, let us know what you think of the Seahawks versus the Bengals. Go ahead and tweet us. I'm at Bader_Matt. Sean is at NastyBilly22. Kevin is at C2Believe, SEA2Believe on X or Twitter. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Like our videos. Tell us what you think in the comments below. We'll be back at some point, but you guys want to talk a little bit about 49ers? What do you got? You guys we got 3 minutes here.
Oh, I just looked at Kevin's point. Brock Purdy was not good last year. He was very fortunate through a lot of pickable passes. He has looked different this year. He's looked better. He has looked like a better football player. Like he's making throws. And I made a comment. Nate Tice looked at it, and it was, that's an NFL throw. Like he threaded the needle over a guy and between two targets. And if he's completing those passes with Kyle Shanahan, we're done. We're not winning a division for 10 years. It's over. Like that front office, that coach, how they put a team together, and they find a guy. We are in a lot of trouble if Brock Purdy's the guy. We better hope and pray that he's not the guy, because if he keeps making those throws with those weapons and that coach, we're in a lot of trouble. So the jury is still out. I mean, it is still like that, but they carved up a very good Dallas defense. Like that was, I'll be honest, I didn't think we would beat them coming this year, and I'm like, we're getting to like holy crap territory. Like, but the 49ers will lose a game at this point because everybody loses a game. So hopefully it could be to us, but I'm just like, fuck. Like basically I was like, uh-oh. Like,
to add quickly to it, because I predicted the Seahawks to take over it because I said I don't believe Brock Purdy is a quarterback, but now somehow he's developed into one, possibly. I mean, yeah, time will still tell, but so far in the first 5 games, he's shown that he can be an NFL quarterback. And with that, I change. They're going to win extra games more than what I predicted at the beginning of the season, because that offense is just too good, and so is that defense. This is probably the scariest. It's if he is what he is on a consistent level, this is the best team in the NFL.
yeah.
This
is like
it's hard to argue against it.
2013 Seahawks, like it very vibes, like monster defense, a quarterback who's legit, like shit, like basically, like
The quest for 6 might be over after this year if he stays healthy.
If Vegas wins the Stanley Cup and the 49ers win a Super Bowl, I might just shoot myself like
oh,
in one season.
Well,
and then the Astros win the World Series. This would be like the worst, like this would just be the worst.
They did play the Steelers, who are something.
No,
the Rams.
You can just say it.
2 and 3. Giants, Cardinals.
The Rams only lose to good teams though.
Cowboys.
The Rams are good.
I mean, I don't think Cowboys are anything special, but you guys might think differently. So
the Cowboys are very good at football. They're very good.
Defense is very good at football. Their offense sucks, but defense is very good.
That defense gave up over 40 points to it.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, with that, we will see you next time on Washington East to West Sports. Bring back our Sonics.